Hey guys, uh, today is the first day of actual school, and so I thought we would go over the schedule that I have made. Obviously, it's very flexible time of the year, so it might change, but for the most part, I am going to give you a due date on Google Classroom, so you guys are aware when you need to finish the multiple choices. Free responses will be always a day after the multiple choice is done. And you can see it depends on the unit. Some units have more, some units have less. And so just be wise in how you paste this. All right, so since Unit 8 and Unit 9 are deleted from our exam, you can get rid of number 14, 17, 19, 21 from our FRQ booklet that I gave you. We won't be using them because that was Unit 8 and 9. April 22nd is when we'll be doing the online mock test, whether we will be at school like physically or not. Since the exam is going to be online, I think it'll be appropriate for us to do the mock test online as well. All right, so the first due date for you guys that's important for you to remember is March 24th, which is in 2 days. Your MCQ for the Unit 1 is due. I saw some of you started already. Good job. Everything was open since March 1st or so. So, yeah. FRQ, number 7, 22, 41, 44, 45. There are 5 of them that you must do for this. What you will notice when you go to Google Classroom is that I give you a assignment that you can upload pictures and things like that. And because I want you to do it on a piece of paper, at least the free responses, do that and use a different color pen to check the answer key, which is also posted already, and give yourself a score. Try to follow as much as possible. For example, if you think it is impossible for you to grade, I can give you 1 star per unit, okay? So if you have 1 question, star, because you don't think you can give yourself an accurate score, then I will grade it for you and let you know why I think you deserve that grade. For Unit 1 MCQ, there isn't really much for you to do on Google Classroom. It is just for me to set up a reminder for you so that you don't miss it. Because if you miss the due date, you are going to get 50% even if you finish everything. All right, so let me briefly let me briefly review Unit 1. I'm not going to go into topics in detail because you should know all this, but you might be wondering what was in Unit 1. So first thing is we talked about how data can be used in statistics and why we care so much about data and how we obtain those data and how we study them, right? The first thing that we had to distinguish was the kind of variables there were. So mainly there was a quantitative and qualitative. Let me write that down. Quantitative versus qualitative, or as you can see here, it's also called categorical. So one was something that you can count and it makes sense to count and maybe take a mean out of it. So like your height, it's inherently numerical. So then it's quantitative variable, whereas your eye color will be a quality, which won't make sense to take an average out of eye colors, right? So that we'll consider qualitative variable. Representing a categorical variable with tables, it just means a one-way table versus two-way table. You are familiar with how to read the tables and make a table. There will be different vocabulary that you might be familiar with already, which is like marginal distribution, conditional probability. Those things are all from this table. Graph, notably, there are different types of graph. Pie chart is a categorical. Bar chart or bar graph is also categorical. What else? I can't think of anything else on top of my head. So these two are most notable graphs for categorical variable. Quantitative variable, you do not use bar chart, you use histogram. And the one difference that they had was the bar chart, there is a gap in between because you have a category and a bar in each. Whereas histogram, if there is a gap, that meant there is no unit between those gaps. So gap in histogram means something very different from gap in bar graph. Okay. Histogram is very notable stem and leaf chart, graph, and dot plot is another one that we use a lot. Stem and leaf, it's important that you always provide a key. If you don't remember what that is, look at your textbook. Distribution of quantitative variable. So when you describe a distribution, there was an acronym that we went by, which was SOUS. So shape, outliers, center, and spread. So you need to realize that when do we use 5-number summary with median and IQR, which is Q3 minus Q1, versus mean and standard deviation, because they went together. So you need to know how to summarize them. Oh, that reminds me. Box and whisker plot is a very important representation of the quantitative variable because that shows you outlier right away, whereas other chart it might be a little bit harder to see. And it's also important to when you talk about shape, it's also important to notify gaps or clusters. Obviously, if it's a unimodal, bimodal, multimodal, but we do go for general trend. We don't nitpick every single anomaly, right? All right, graphical representation of summary statistics. I don't know what that means actually. Sorry, graphical representations of summary statistics. Let me look. Okay, I just looked at the description, but it's basically, can you tell if something is like skewed to the right, skewed to the left? If something is skewed to the right, what is the relationship between median and mean? And if it's asymmetrical, what is the relationship between median and mean? That's basically what it is. So remember the skewness, it's always following the tail. So this way is skewed to the right, and this way is skewed to the left. Okay. And usually when we describe the distribution, even if it looks normal, we try to avoid using the word normal. We usually go substitute that with symmetrical and unimodal, okay? Because unless you can prove normal, you shouldn't use it because normal is a very specific type of distribution. So what you need to remember from this unit of the normal distribution, obviously there's a standardized normal distribution where your mean is 0 and your standard deviation is 1, right? This is when you standardize. And then we learned something about z-score, and we also learned something about empirical rules, which went 66.8, 95, 99, I think, percent. You need to remember what that means. So basically the normal distribution, if you are 1 standard deviation away from the mean, right, we are going from the center, then you capture 66.8% of the population. And if you go 2 standard deviations away, you capture 95% of the population, and then 3 standard deviation away. So usually, if it's hard to determine what outlier is, if it's outside of 3 standard deviation, you can consider them as outliers. But also you can use the fence, upper fence, using the IQR. So another way to find outlier was Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR and Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR, and anything that's more extreme than those values were considered outliers. Or you can use a calculator. Actually, do review how to use a calculator. Can you draw a histogram? Can you draw box and whisker plot and know how to read them? I think that's the only 2 things that you can actually draw on a calculator. But can you do 1 var stat? Like, do you know what that means? And do you know all these little variables that tells you what value correspond with what, right? So review all that. It's a good start. It's been a while since we did this, but we've been doing this the whole time, so you should be able to refresh yourself quickly. All right, let me read today's devotional, which is on blame. Okay. I'm stunned at how quickly the word "sue him" can come out of my 10-year-old's mouth. A product of our culture, whenever something doesn't seem fair or something bad happens, he is ready to place the blame and to make someone pay. Oftentimes, when unfair, undeserved suffering comes into our lives, we demand to hold someone responsible. The doctor who made a drastic error in judgment, the driver who had too much to drink, the divorce lawyer who drove such a hard bargain. But the someone we most often hold responsible for the suffering in our lives is God. Is that where you find yourself today? Are you blaming God for something that has happened in your life? Have you been carrying it around for a long time now? Blaming God. We might not say we blame God outright, but we become bitter. Bitter toward the alcoholic father or violent attacker, not seeing that bitterness is ultimately blaming God for the circumstances of our lives. When trouble comes, we think, I don't deserve this. But wait, what would your life be like if you did get what you really deserve? Were it not for the grace of God, for His mercy, what would your life be like? Think about that for a minute. Evidently, Job did not have the mindset that he deserved his comfortable, blessed life. Amazingly, we see that Job did not blame God for taking away everything and everyone he loved so dearly. Somehow, Job avoided blaming God for his devastating circumstances. So how did Job do it? And more importantly, how can you and I, when we've lost so much, avoid becoming bitter, blaming people? First, I think we need a clear understanding of where the blame belongs. Much of the evil that happens in the world, in your world, in my world, is a natural consequence of humanity's sinfulness. Don't blame God. Blame sin. Blame Adam. The book of Romans helps us understand. Romans 5:12 says, when Adam sinned, sin entered the entire human race. Adam's sin brought death, so death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. And Romans 8:20 through 21, against its will, everything on earth was subjected to God's curse. All creation anticipates the day when it will join God's children in glorious freedom from death and decay. Death, disease, destruction, they're all the result of living in a world where sin has taken root and corrupted everything. It is this curse of sin that required Jesus to become flesh and to die. He died to overcome the curse of sin, not only in our individual lives, but in all of creation. In fact, because of his sufficient sacrifice, the day is coming when we will be set free from this curse. Then I saw a new heaven and new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, look, the home of God is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will remove all of their sorrows, and there will be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain. For the old world and its evil are gone forever. No longer will anything be cursed, for the throne of God and of the Lamb will be there, and his servants will worship him. This is from Revelation 21 and 22. For now, we still live in a world that is under a curse, and unless we follow Job's example, it's easy to blame God. I think the key to Job's ability to keep from blaming God is in the first line of his story, which says that Job feared God. What does it mean to fear God? It certainly goes beyond simply being afraid of God. It is a profound sense of reverential awe toward God. But really, it is even more than that. The fear of God is better described than defined. It is displayed in a person's character and conduct. A person who fears God recognizes God's authority over every area of his life or her life. He has a desire to obey God's clear commands in Scripture. He recognizes his complete dependence upon God for everything he has and everything he is. He approaches every aspect of life with an aim to glorify God. And when life deals him a blow, his fear of God is revealed more completely. I'm running out of time. I have one more page and I'll read it tomorrow. Bye!